I guess in terms of being Australian, I'm not the Australian government. And in terms of the question, I think there Brian made a extremely good point. Completely independently of everything else, I would say that it was an incredibly stupid decision to actually say that one wanted to be the top 5 in any international test in a piece of legislation. And I think that's completely, as Brian has indicated, completely the wrong way to look at these kind of assessments, which are obviously designed to provide international comparisons, but I think, as Brian said, one has to use them in a sensible way, and in terms of the improvement of one's education systems or one's labour market system, the interaction between the education and the labour market system, wanting to be number 1 or number 5 or above average in the assessment seems to me to be a rather narrow way of looking at the issues, particularly because these kind of assessments only measure some of the things that matter in life and in the labour market and in education. And I think that's actually an important point to recognise, that in an assessment such as PIAAC, one is measuring literacy, numeracy and problem solving in technology in rich environments, I think quite well, but they are narrow, well, sorry, they're not narrow skills, but they're particular skills, particular competencies which we're measuring quite accurately. But there are a whole range of other skills and attributes that matter for employment and for life that we are not measuring, which are related to these kind of skills, and they include the domain-specific knowledge one gets from university or from vocational education, a range of other personal attributes and abilities such as communication skills, which we're not measuring. And I think if you look at the amount of variance that is unexplained in our wage equations, even when we include educational attainment, experience and literacy and numeracy, one knows that there's a lot out there that matters for these kind of outcomes that we're not capturing. But at the same time, I think it's very important that we have very good measures of these, I think in terms of PIAAC, what one could call foundation skills, or I don't like the word basic skills, but certainly those skills that provide a foundation for a lot of the other cognitive skills that are of value to individuals and in a number of contexts. I don't know whether that responded to Brian's challenge or not. I mean, in summary, I mean, I think Brian actually did a very good job for me, actually. I think this has been, for me, a very interesting event. It's been, I think, to start off, the Slovenian team for PIAAC has done an excellent job. They started quite late in the process and actually had to sort of run to catch up and with the other countries involved in the so-called second round, which they did, and they've produced very high quality data. What's even better is that there appears to be a very active effort by the Institute and by the government, the ministries involved, to actually look further at that data and use that data. There are a number of countries, advanced countries, which have not done nearly as much work as you have in Slovenia, and have not as invested as much time and resources in the analysis of the data as you have here. And I think it's by doing that you will get the greatest value out of these kind of data and these kind of studies. I think that from my feeling is that the value of these kind of studies is not in the league tables or the headlines that one gets, but in the ability one has to actually explore important questions more deeply, and to understand the complexity of life and the labour market and the relationships between education and the labour market. And I think by providing good quality comparative data sets, it provides everyone with the opportunity to do that. I think too that the influence of these kind of studies on policy is not necessarily direct, but it's by actually making people think more deeply about the world and how to act on it. It's to help people think, well, if I do X, will Y follow? It's to think about the kind of causal pathways that lead from a particular policy intervention to a particular desired outcome. And by having better information about these kind of interactions, I think we're much better served in terms of policy development. Yes, I mean, information in itself is never a sufficient condition for good policy development or good decisions, but having better information, I think, helps increase the chances of people making good decisions and having good policies. There's nothing to stop anyone, politicians or anyone else, from ignoring evidence or ignoring information, but I think by having the information available and also high quality analysis of that information, one can help the process of making good public policy decisions. I mean, part of that too is of course making sure that the kind of information that we do develop can be communicated effectively to people who do make decisions. And I think here one often says that politicians don't like anything that's over 3 pages or even 3 lines at times, and that there's always this push to be able to put things simply. I mean, I think there that the issue is putting things simply rather than simplistically, and I think there's a tendency in public policy these days to not only to demand the simple but to demand the simplistic, and I think it's really important that everyone involved in public policy, from research to policy advisors, actually avoid that. One has to recognise that the world is complex, and that metaphors like pulling levers have no sense in a world that we see as cybernetic, in the sense of a set of interrelations between events and circular causality. Pulling levers or turning taps, I think, is the kind of simplistic metaphors that we've really got to get away from. Even though we at the OECD always talk about policy levers. So they're just some general thoughts in terms of the overall the kinds of presentations today. I mean, they covered a range of issues that have been are of interest to researchers across the OECD, and I think they seem to me, from what I can understand, I mean, unfortunately, in a sense, being the sort of set of cotton wool between me and what was said, this is despite the excellent interpretation. It's from what I could see, these were grappling with those issues at a very high level, and I think I would expect that some of those papers can make a good contribution to the intellectual debate on these kind of issues. So again, thank you very much for inviting me here, and I wish you all well in the continued exploration of the PIAAC data, and certainly in terms of if anyone here has questions about the data, wants to know more about it, please contact us, because I mean, at the OECD we are there to help people use the data. We receive a lot of questions from researchers and others about issues of methodology, etc., and we're always willing to provide you with the necessary information. So if you do have questions, please contact us. So thank you very much.